Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Global Go's continuing webinar series, where we bring in a panel of thought leaders and industry participants to discuss and deep dive issues that are vital to the development of our industry. Previously, we have focused on individual countries like Switzerland or Mexico or Colombia, but today we are going to unpack one of the most important issues that really goes to the soul of our industry, and that is promoting inclusion and opportunity in cannabis markets. Those of us like myself that have been in the industry for years are probably well versed in the importance of this issue. And I'll just say that I feel that we have done a great job talking about the paramountcy of this issue, but we've done a less than stellar job implementing that rhetoric into actual action. And specifically, we're talking about communities that have been historically disadvantaged by the economic infrastructure of the country, as well as by the war on drugs, which we all know was a code name for a partial race war. And I will say, as an industry participant, that I don't grade our industry with a very high score to date in terms of actually turning well-meaning rhetoric into meaningful action that will give a lift up to communities that are capable of competing with anybody if they're just allowed in to the door. So this is a really, really important issue to our industry. I will say it is the soul of our issue, or the DNA of our industry. And I'm so excited today to introduce some really thoughtful participants that are going to share with you what we all need to do to move the needle in the direction. Before I get started, I would like to encourage all of our attendees today who are enjoying the content making a donation in lieu of an admission fee to our chosen charity today, Last Prisoners Project. Last Prisoners Project is committed towards creating not only social justice, but freeing people, largely of color, who have been incarcerated in egregious fashion for participating in the same economy that many of us are celebrating and turning into income. So it's really, really important that we support Last Prisoners, because they're actually liberating, and that's the right word, liberation, people that are in jail for nonsense reasons. And this is not just a legacy, this is still ongoing. There is still unequal enforcement of cannabis laws, highlighting and targeting people of color. And it's high time that we turn momentum into action and begin to right these historical wrongs. The panel today is going to unpack some of these really important issues. But before we get to our panel, I'm just so thrilled to introduce today's guest speaker, Ms. Sholanda Ingram, Social Equity Director of Cannabis. Born and raised in St. Louis, Missouri, Sholanda is committed to elevating consciousness and empowering the collective liberation of individuals, organizations, and communities. Sholanda has deployed worldwide for the transformation of people, practices, and systems. Native to grassroots activism, Sholanda works with social justice, spiritual, and corporate organizations to explore network effect and elevate opportunities for resource sharing while scaling. Sholanda is committed to the creation of whole, connected communities that thrive by building structures of clarity, capacity enhancement, and trust. I'm so delighted to introduce today's guest speaker, Sholanda Ingram.
Hey, everybody. Thank you so much for that warm introduction, Paul, and thank you for being in this work and committing the organization to this work. We're just going to hop right to it. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and we'll just begin this conversation. And get into present mode. All right. Okay, So we're having a conversation today around diversity, equity, and inclusion, right? JEDI. And we're talking about awareness to action, some things that we're up to specifically right now at Cannabis Scope, right? So I wanted to, I'm skipping my intro. Thank you, Paul, for making that happen. So one of the primary things that I want to engage you all in is a context around land acknowledgement, right? One of the many ways to start to train yourself and your organization to right historical wrongs and address dynamics is by outright acknowledging where your corporation is, what's going on with the indigenous people that are there, and how you may engage them in what you're doing, right? So we chose to focus on the Global Go headquarters, which is in LA. And that land is actually on Chumash land, right? So I'm gonna share just the bottom portion of this to be really clear that many of us in different locations are living on land that we have no relationship to, no connection to. This approach is fundamental to beginning a journey of being equitable and authentic about where you stand, how you exist in the world, some of your privileges, etc. Right? And so when we pay our respects to elders from the past and the present on the indigenous lands, we can actually begin to heal these dynamics. If you have any confusion about where you stand, I highly encourage you to engage in the link that's listed here, as well as utilizing this number to text and learn exactly where you stand and what's going on. I do want to share that I did not make this up, right? I am not the only person in the world who knows about this topic. I am informed by many. These are some of those folks and some of the leaders that inspire me. So the conversation that we're having today is one, as it was billed or booked, right? What you signed up to be a part of is specifically around social equity and thought leaders. But what I want to really drive home today during our brief time is that the cannabis industry is operating inside of a system, right? A long-standing system of marginalization and oppression, right? In order to deal with that, we have to look at the historical scenario, the present day scenario, and do some acknowledgement work to start to even evolve this dialogue, okay? So each of us, each human being who's running a business, who's participating in all of this, has a role to play in creating a system that's distinct from the one that we're operating in, that we have trouble functioning in, and that we have so much to say about, right? These outcomes are gonna require a persistent way of being that is authentic, just, equitable, and diverse, and inclusive. And when I say persistence, I really want you to take that word to heart, because the system that is operating that we are so frustrated with is incredibly persistent. It does not waver, it's incredible. And we have to meet that system with the same level of commitment to justice, being equitable, diverse, and inclusive. All right. So I wanted to talk a little bit about defining the struggle, right? We all talk about difficulties, et cetera. And it's important that we really look at how unique the system is. It has definitions. It knows what it's doing. It's very clear, right? So to marginalize a group or a person or a concept, you have to make it insignificant, right? You have to make it peripheral. You have to put it over there, not at the center, not at a part of things, okay? And what that ultimately boils down to is that we spend our lives negotiating about each other's humanity and whether or not we're gonna be concerned about how other people experience life, right? And we have all kinds of fancy names for the systems that we participate in that have us do that, but ultimately we're just participating in a very well-defined system. The impact of this marginalization over time is what we call oppression, right? And I really want to drive home these definitions. They are in the Oxford Dictionary. They are very clear, and they are systematic tools for engaging in the outcomes that the system wants to create, right? So the distinction that I want to make between marginalization and oppression is time, okay? So when we talk about oppressed people, when we talk about women not having a fair wage, this isn't a new thing. This is like forever and ever, okay? When we talk about police brutality, et cetera, these are long-term dynamics. They're not brief, they're not remotely brief, okay? What I also want to drive home is that the impact is that we end up with individuals, communities, and even huge organizations and even societies being exceptionally apathetic, right? And having that be the norm. And when I say apathetic, I mean, hey, that's not my situation. I don't have to concern myself. Or, hey, I don't watch the news now. I make enough money, right? That's what we're talking about. The impact also includes very real statistics, okay? Like right now, 6.6% of women are CEOs. That's about 37 women running large scale organizations in the most profound environment for women in the world, the United States, right? And then we also can look at some of the other impacts where leaders of these organizations are occupying very tiny percentages, right, of opportunities. We also can look at seed money very plainly, very clearly. Even to work with a woman is a risk for a male entrepreneur, the way that this current system is structured, right? And for Black women, there's a pay scale that is incredibly disgusting, right? And we can all understand this very plainly. It's very clear and very simple. The invitation that I'm making, however, knowing all of these things, is that as individuals, and as others, community leaders, et cetera, and the system, we have to work together and we have to create grace, right? And I define that as a space of loving kindness, right? Because we're not going to get anything done if we're not coming from a place of what's possible, coming from a place of workability and creating some outcomes. It's really difficult to look at any of these distinctions or oppressions at all. And it's really difficult to look at them when you have a hopelessness about the situation. So the other invitation I'm making in our brief time together today is to become a Jedi, right? And by Jedi, I truly mean be on a journey around this work. It is lifetime work. It is not brief. It is often messy, and it requires some vulnerability. So when I make the invitation for you to become a Jedi, I make an invitation for you to dismantle barriers, right? To barriers that reduce opportunities for other people, right? Create dignity for yourself, for the people around you, the people that you touch, people that you work with, right? We're talking about equity, right? We want to allocate resources. We want to participate. We know what inequity looks like, right? We also want to look at diversity. And when we talk about diversity, we're not talking Black and white specifically. We're talking about, can people in wheelchairs also come into the dispensary or participate in the jobs, right? We want to make that as big of a net as possible. Inclusion, we want to look at creating, like fostering this sense of belonging and centering and value and amplifying these voices, right? And I really want to drive this point about inclusion and diversity, equity, and justice. It's so critical that we stop pretending that we don't know what it is and that we don't know how it feels. Any of us who've ever been to school for the first day or joined a new soccer team, we know what it's like to be included, to be enrolled, for people to welcome us, or for people to not do that, right? So I want to invite you to discover where your stuff is, embody it, and heal it, right? And be on this journey of being a Jedi. And for more of my visual folks, and for folks who grew up maybe with some of these types of stories, you know, there's a way that we can also look at these things. If you're struggling with these definitions, struggle with them, learn about them, get your own perspective, right? So you can take it into other contexts. It doesn't have to be negative and horrible and gross. It can be something that you're practicing and that you're reading about, learning about, and participating in. Right? And so when it comes to the action, however, this is real work. You're going to be looking at yourself. You're going to be looking at yourself as an individual. How am I showing up? Do I have these ideas about people who aren't like me, who didn't go to the same schools as me, right? And I invite you to look at it again as a Jedi. You're on a journey, right? You may have some serious, intense fears. You may have some things you need to learn, and then you're inevitably going to be growing. And in this industry, we're all about growing, right? And participating in an evolutionary process. Our entire industry is based on growth. And so I invite you to take action in that way. Another way to take immediate action is to leverage your language, right? Wherever you are in this conversation, are you creating a welcoming environment, right? For people to be seen, valued, and heard? Are you giving credit for the work that you didn't do? Are you fostering an environment for shared understanding? Can you use your words to be creating a powerful thing? No harm, right? For anyone around you. And then really keeping in mind that some of the historical trauma makes it really difficult for us to share some of the same things as jokes, right? The other thing I want to leave you with is just leap, right? You're going to need to be humble, you're going to need to fumble, and you're going to need people around you that you can grow and learn with. One thing is to think about it from listening and learning, engage, ask, and provide, right? Taking these types of actions make a huge difference for people who are marginalized when they can see that you're making an effort, you're involving them in solving an issue that actually is critical in their lives. The other thing on the work front is really looking at workability. Does this work? Does this not work? It takes a huge sting out of this polarization that we're in socially, particularly in the United States, right? And so when it comes to creating this culture, it's how does it feel to be in your space? We often think about this stuff from the customer standpoint, but how does it feel for the person who's packaging products, or the person who's answering the phone, or the person who's making a delivery? Everyone is a part of this culture, and it's not possible for them to live that out. And they are often the marginalized people on the front line, right? So we really need to be inside of this everything works and nothing doesn't culture, so we can even address some of the issues that the people who work with and for us and beside us.
21A and B are open. I would want to get it, but I don't want anybody to.
So, pardon me, I'm going to scooch back here. All right, we got you muted, Marvin. All right, so this everything works and nothing doesn't, we just experienced that right now. It totally works for Marvin to be doing what he's doing while I'm handling this business here for our community, right? That's the attitude and energy that we want to live with. Some of these actions will require agreement, however, and you're going to need to create these agreements in your workplace to host some of these dialogues and participate, right? Even beginning any of these conversations will require some of these things. Being present, right? One person speaking at a time. Take space, make space. Giving freely of your experience. Keyword being your, right? My experience is unique, it's mine, and I'm able to stand in it. I believe the same is true for every human being when they have the opportunity to be vulnerable and to share. And when you're providing opportunities that are connected to economics for people, we have a responsibility to participate in their wellness, if that's truly the type of business that you want to run. Confidentiality. When you're creating these environments, you need to be able to build meaningful relationships, right? And confidentiality means you're not gossiping, you're holding people's experiences sacred, etc. And that everyone's a teacher, everyone's a student. That type of environment, people can thrive, people can share what their experiences are, what their struggles are, and even perhaps create workability and long-term relationships where people can build and be more innovative in their roles on the job when they're safe enough to be brave, right? And then what we also want to do is recognize and be empathetic at how these things impact people. Now that could be the news, that could be someone had an issue that is unique in their community and we're not paying attention to it. It could be an indigenous holiday, or someone had a divorce and now they're a single parent. These are all things that we need to be open and available for empathy with, right? And then whoever the marginalized group is or people are in the space, they are not the educator when it comes to this work in our environments, right? Great. So at Cannabis Scope, what we have created is a community of practice, right? Where I'm in a leadership role, Frank's in a leadership role, Marvin's in a leadership role, Charles is in a leadership role. That is unusual in the cannabis space in general, as well as it's unusual in general in business in the United States, right? Warren Brown, All Rights Reserved, Shine Diversity, Bolder Decisions, and Jennifer's social media business, we're all coming with communities, leaders who are marginalized owners, right? So we're taking action in this very specific way to make sure that even our vendors are diverse and we're learning from them and we're able to experience what's going on with the LGBTQ community, what's happening with the Asian community, what's happening with women in business. And we're charging ourselves to that level of functionality at Cannabis Scope. So I just wanted to set the tone for us today to be in this panel and be in this conversation about what we're up to at Cannabis Scope as the rest of the community begins to share. Thanks for listening, everybody. It's great to be with you.
That was amazing, Shalanda. You did a lot more than set the tone. You really laid out exactly what is the opportunity and what are some of the challenges. We're so grateful for your advocacy and your leadership, and I'm very inspired by your words, and we'll try to put them into action. Just for all of our attendees, if you're interested in asking any of the panelists or Shalanda any questions, there's a chat or Q&A button on the Zoom feed. Just feel free. We'll try to get to any questions that you have. Again, Shalanda, thank you so much. So thrilled now to move to our panel and to introduce our moderator, Mr. Marvin Washington, the Director, Vice President of Business Relations for Isodol International. I think a lot of people know Marvin because of the incredible advocacy and leadership he's shown in our industry. Sports fans like myself originally knew Marvin as a superstar in the NFL who played for the Jets, the Niners, and the Broncos. And I believe, as Marvin will unpack, he really had a front row seat to the devastating impact that opiate addiction had on NFL families. And he's been a leader in helping to raise awareness about this issue and has persistently urged, lobbied, cajoled, and inveigled the NFL to change policy to allow players to use cannabis for treating their injuries in states where it's legal to do so. And I do think, as much as any other advocate, Marvin has helped move the needle. And we're seeing now professional sports leagues, as recently as the UFC this morning or yesterday, bringing a much more broad-based approach and stopping to test for cannabis use for their players and supporting cannabis as a preferred method to deal with pain and avoid the deleterious effects of opiate addiction. Marvin recently launched a new line of CBD-infused water for athletes and has appeared regularly at educational cannabis events globally. It's also noteworthy that Marvin is a plaintiff in a case pending appeal before the U.S. Supreme Court against the Department of Justice and former Attorney General Jeff Sessions, pertaining to the obvious injustice of CBD classification, historical classification as Schedule 1. Of course, some of this might have been addressed through the Farm Bill, but there's still work to be done. So pleased to introduce today's moderator, Mr. Marvin Washington. Believe Marvin is with us. We had him a moment ago. It seems that Marvin has dropped off the feed, so I'm hoping he's going to come back in a moment. But I'm going to temporarily, and I do mean temporarily, take over the moderator's position, and I'm confident that Marvin will be back on in just a moment and will do a much better job than I'm going to do. So I'm going to introduce our panelists to begin. I believe Shalanda is going to join us as well as a panelist after her inspiring keynote. She's joined by Frank Shamrock, the CEO of Frank Shamrock Inc., and the revenue director at Cannabis Scope. Frank is another elite athlete that was a champion at UFC and has really had a tremendous entrepreneurial career. Frank teaches executive leadership to leading companies like Google. I'm sure we've all heard of Google, the US Army, the Marines, and Spanx, to name just a few. And Frank really is playing a leadership role in the cannabis industry. Frank is joined by April Walker, the CEO of Walker Wear. April is a fashion game changer and culture creator that has helped inspire Elaine, helping to create a multi-billion-dollar industry according to streetwear today through her brand Walker Wear. As the first woman in this lane, she's also one of the first to dominate in urban menswear, securing celebrity endorsements from the likes of legends like Tupac, Notorious B.I.G., and even Beavis and Butthead. Finally, our panel is rounded out by Janet Jackham, attorney at Zuber Lawler. Ms. Jackham is particularly well-versed in cannabis law and cannabis litigation. She's handled the acquisition of cannabis operations across the United States, and her expertise in cannabis law has allowed her to represent clients in diverse topics, including matters relating to cannabis dispensary certificate applications, buyout transactions, business restructuring, and partner dispute resolution. Janet is based in Phoenix and serves on the board of directors of the Arizona Cannabis Chamber of Commerce on the legal committee of the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws, sometimes called NORML, and is secretary of the Arizona Cannabis Bar Association. So I want to welcome each of the panelists, and I think we'll get right into it, the question and answer. So I'm going to start with April, and I'm going to throw this out to the whole group. April, what is your view on the current state of the cannabis industry for marginalized communities?
Wow, that's a good question. It's basically, for me, it's very much a reflection of what I've experienced in the fashion industry, being the first woman in streetwear and being a woman of color. There's been so many challenges of adversity, the journey. While it's a multi-billion-dollar industry, both, I feel like the gatekeepers are still the same, who limit resources, access to financing, information, opportunities. The actual partnerships and all of the equity plays are usually at a very high entry point in terms of participation. So there are a lot of Jim Crow cannabis laws that still exist. I feel the same way about fashion. So we have a lot of work to do. And when we look at Black and brown people, we have to look at the fact that systemic racism is across the board, all industries, and it just has to change. And this is an industry that has such opportunity, and it can change generational wealth for years to come. So I just say to all the Black and brown people, as well as others on this, we have work to do. But for Black and browns, like, don't let that be something you say, I'm not going to get involved because of it. Get involved because of it, because of the laws that have oppressed people that were nonviolent for cannabis arrests, and now there's this industry that exists that everyone's benefiting from. You need to benefit from, so you can pass on and change your communities, change the lives of your kids, your grandkids, etc., and do the work required to do that. And it doesn't have to be a dispensary. That this is a growing industry like everything else. So the opportunities are abundant, from accounting to marketing to real estate to whatever you can imagine. Cannabis is an industry that's going to need it.
Fantastic. That's well said, and bravo for those comments. Shalonda, let me ask you the same question. What is your view of the current state of the cannabis industry for marginalized communities? You're on mute, Shalonda.
I agree with April. And I think what I would add is that we're not going to get the work done without doing the work, right? So we can't act like, oh, in the cannabis space, we're going to do this, and over here, we're going to do that. The jig is up. We need to do this work. We need to tell the truth. We need to keep it real. And we need to be concerned about humanity. And I think cannabis scope is a micro macro, right? So I think that the more that we address how cannabis was also, and why it was also ever set on the same schedule as every other substance, that'll also begin to create people's awareness of what's up. I also think that engaging Indigenous community leaders is also a critical missing, and that, yeah, we can, anything that is needed for real business to occur, cannabis needs. And part of the big problem that I see is people going from hiding their existence as a legacy dispenser to functioning as an out and open business person in the cannabis space, right? So those are the things that I would add to what April shared.
Amazing. Thank you, Shalonda. Frank, let me steer this over to you. You're, first of all, you have a high profile because of your phenomenal career as a professional athlete, but I also know that you're equally enabled as a fabulous entrepreneur. And I want to ask you, what is your observation as an industry participant that maybe has had some advantages in large part due to your fame and your celebrity? What is your view in terms of the challenges that marginalized communities currently still face as they try to participate in a meaningful way in this agreed transformative industry?
Sure. Yeah, I think the girls, really said it best. It's really about the history, as a business owner. All business is the same. It doesn't matter what industry you're in, but all industries are suffering from, this history legacy, which we either embrace and make efforts to change, or we just, cover it up and keep moving forward. And I think this is the time socially where I don't do businesses unless they impact people socially. Like, to me, entrepreneurism is two opportunities. It's about providing for yourself and then helping other people. And when you look at the cannabis space, there's such opportunity. It doesn't matter where you fall right now. And while the barriers do exist, and while there is still all of that legacy in place, much like mixed martial arts, it's an open industry in that if you have a skill, if you have a desire, if you have an understanding of what's going on, and you're willing to network and work and hustle a little bit, there's opportunity for everybody. And that's what I really like about the cannabis space. There's a lot of misinformation, there's a lot of education that's needed, but overall, there's a lot of opportunity, and it's open for everybody. But what I encourage, all the people I consult with, it's like exactly what, Shalonda said, know the history and know the people, and then know that we're one group, like we're all the same. So if we're not working on these things together, there's going to be a barrier to success for all of us, for my business, for your business, for our businesses together. And as we remove those barriers through action, that's where the fruit from cannabis is sort of available for everybody. So, what I really was, I know Shalonda, and I love working with her, but I love history, because if you study history, you'll know the future. So we just can't ignore what has got us here. And then, every business should be making efforts to embrace that history. If there's wrongs, try to right them, and then provide as much opportunity as possible for everybody.
Well said. I believe with that expression, those who ignore the past are doomed to repeat it. John, let me steer this to you, because you've played a really meaningful role in a number of advocacy organizations. And so I'd like to get your perspective. And I think this is a question I want all the panelists to address, but I'll start with Janet. Where are we right now on scorecarding, turning all this great rhetoric? Every conference I've gone to for years talks about this, but in the actual real world, does action match rhetoric, or is there still a lag or a discrepancy between what we say we want and what actually is happening in the industry real time?
Ooh, you're going to use my quote. I know it. Thank you. Great question. We are horribly out of sync. We are horribly defective, deficient in actually implementing these programs. The words, the suggestions, the actions are really important, but wow, we've got so much more to do. As I was listening to Shalonda and April in particular, I thought, oh, if I could just do over my life and dedicate myself to making a real impact for people who haven't had the luxuries that I've had in life. It breaks my heart. I mean, seriously, I was almost at tears in listening to them, because I think of myself, and I think we should all do this. Think of our friends who happen to be people of color, and think about what they've been through, and perhaps contrast it with what we've been able to achieve in this cannabis world, and take it to heart. Look out there for real activities that you can contribute to that will make a significant difference in someone's life. And if we all repeat that, now we're talking about making real progress. It isn't enough for the industry to adopt these programs or to provide the speeches about how important these programs are. We really, as an industry, have to change, make the change. So one of the things I'm doing is encouraging the MSOs, the multi-state operators, to sponsor expungement clinics. My God, if we don't get people off these dead tracks as a result of 10 years of being in prison for a minor possession, how can we as a society move forward? So I think one of the first steps every cannabis company ought to do is work on expungement. Let's help people get out of the ruts that were established by the war on drugs. And then we can focus on helping those people find a trade, go to school, find a job, work in our industry. But ultimately then their achievements make the whole society so much better. And I won't have to cry about these horrible activities that occurred in the past and are still occurring.
I think we could all get behind that. That's very well said. April, I want to go back to you because you are a woman of color who has built a dynamic business. And I don't have a point of view to say what challenge. I mean, I've run multiple businesses, and let's just say business is hard for everybody, but it would be disingenuous for me to say as a white male that it has been as hard for me as it probably was for you, April. So I'd love to hear some of the war stories, I guess, that you had to experience in order to get your business, your incredible business, where it is today, and really highlighting what challenges that you faced uniquely because of who you are and what you are versus the regular challenges that we all face, regardless of what our origin story is.
Okay, there's not enough time on this.
I knew it.
That's a fireside chat, but
yeah.
But I'll two that pop in mind is early stage beginning. I started at a time when this wasn't called streetwear. In my fashion industry, there was no industry for this. It was really a lifestyle that I was living, and I believed in something artistic. I saw that my tribe wasn't being served, and I just started creating. And from that, there was this trail that started and eventually became streetwear. But the gatekeepers didn't accept hip hop or that fashion genre. They didn't even consider that category as a category. So it was constantly being challenged and constantly being told, that's the fad. What is that? Your prices shouldn't be the same prices as Fila. Why do you charge the same? You're not an Italian designer. Being in the same rooms, board meetings, being the only woman, and being told, you don't hear my voice because I'm a woman. You know what I mean? And having to learn how to navigate in that space of men and making men think it's their idea in order to be heard. You know, that's one of the things. Another would be finance. You know, predatory lending existed just like it exists in our real estate market for people of color. It existed in business, and the laws weren't the same. They weren't fair. It was basically subprime lending. That's really what it was. And it was like, to get factored, your rates were so high that you'd be in the red by the time you finished, you know? So there's all these invisible laws and challenges that exist if you're a person of color. And if you sign on the dotted line, you're really giving away your business. So you're really working for everyone else except making money for yourself. And it's a very hard dance to keep dancing, you know, to go the distance. I would say that.
Amazing. Would you, just as a follow-up question to that, do you feel that in 2021, some of those institutional barriers have receded, or is it still a matter of taking a sledgehammer and banging away?
It's still a matter of taking a sledgehammer and banging, banging, banging harder than ever. I feel like we are going through a cultural shift right now. But I don't know if it's because the world is upside down and Black Lives Matter is trending, and so are women. I want to say that it's permanent change, but it won't be permanent change without us all doing this and doing the work constantly and not taking our foot off the gas pedal, just to make it a fair and equitable space for all human beings. I think there's a lot of work that still has to be done for not just women of color, but true diversity.
Fantastic. And congratulations for swinging that sledgehammer so well and knocking down bricks and keep swinging away. Shalonda, let me go back to you. Of course, you're an activist, but I love history, so I'm always reading about what was before, just as Frank said, because it helps inform us about what we need to do better going forward. But I guess my question, not to be too cynical, but just to be a little bit cynical, is this moment we're in right now going to transform forever and ever in a positive way the relationship amongst the disadvantaged communities in America, be they Black, Brown, or Native? Or is this moment reflecting the culture today, but not unlike other instances, the civil rights movement, post-Reconstruction America, where there was sort of like institutional racism creep, meaning that there was initiatives, but it turned out that there was still, insidious barriers that kept on popping up. So is this sort of Black Lives Matter post George Floyd world that we're living in right now, do you get the sense that this is different in a way in terms of its permanence? Not that we don't need to remain vigilant, but is your sense that we are on the transformation of a whole sort of new paradigm? Or are you concerned that this is going to be the topic du jour this year, but somehow in a year or so, we'll find ourselves sliding backwards?
Well, one of the primary things that I mentioned was persistence, right? And that we're negotiating each other's humanity, and it's up to us to stop doing that. We could stop all of this madness at any time, right? Like, we go to the moon, right? Like, we do all manner of things that we choose to do. So my answer to this will always be, it's up to us. And it's up to us one choice at a time, one moment at a time, one interaction at a time, one document at a time, one, interview with somebody, if we're going to fund them or not, at a time. And this is not, what's making it difficult is the denial, right? And it's really up to, no disrespect to white men, to stop the madness, right? Because that's who's running the madness. And so we really get to say it's up to white men to either do this work, look at the Roman Empire, deal with the interior trauma, right? Because like the US is derivative of that, right? So either that work's going to happen and people are going to go within and learn where they came from and not be mad at everybody else, right? And create a world of possibility for every other human being. So really, these systems are being held in place by just a few people. And either we're going to hold them accountable with persistence, or we're going to watch Netflix and not trip, right? And so it's really a matter of who we choose to be day in, day out. Are we opening the door for people who are on crutches? Are we concerned about each other, right? Are we out here in life with each other? So I feel that it's completely up to us, and we get tired, we make excuses, we stop going to the meeting, we don't go vote, right? So it's up to us. Yeah.
Frank, let me circle back to you and sort of follow up. As I'm a white male in my mid 50s, so I'm in that target demographic that definitely needs to put this right on my dashboard, the first thing I see and think about. But sometimes I find my lofty aspirations, I'm still not entirely sure how to actually activate that for change. I'd like to believe, and I do believe that I fundamentally believe in equality, which I do, and equal opportunity, but sometimes I still, if you will, struggle because I'm running my business and I'm dealing with so many challenges all by myself. Despite my privilege, I lose the paramountcy of thinking outside of my bubble, because anyone that's run a business, it's like a real-time fire drill every single day. And you've got shit to do that is so like urgent right now that you sometimes put the bigger picture stuff aside. But Frank, what's your view? How do we avoid falling into that kind of trap that I'm so busy, I'm going to get to it once I just reach a certain level of stability with my business? What can we do to empower change even when our businesses aren't exactly where we want them?
Yeah, for me, that comes down to, deploying things of importance, right? So for me, it's education, awareness, and then opportunity. So if I know what happened, if I know what's going on, then I can create machines to support that. And that's what I love about Cannabis Scope. It's like, it's a business in a box. It's a machine where anybody can make money. We've built everything. The deployment's there. All you got to do is show up and hustle, and you can make money. And those are the type of, with technology, with opportunity, those are the type of deployments that allow people to get in without any, understanding of business. I started martial arts. I had no understanding of martial arts, but through community, through development, through practice, through opportunity, I was able to create a very successful career. That's because people cared. That's because there was a community that was interested in this idea, this notion, and then there was deployment. I went out and did the work. And all the ladies, everybody here, we've done the work, but are we providing those opportunities for other people? And as I build out my business, as I become successful, it's just, that awareness should kick in, especially if I take a little time for education, that, hey, there's people, they need help. How can I help them with my business? And we as leaders all have resources. We all have assets. And when it comes time to help, we just need deployment and know that, this is a community that is willing to hustle. They're willing to work. We've all, had the need, and the need is there, but it's up to us leaders to really put those machines in place. And that's where business leadership, mentorship, education, that's where we can be leaders of this new movement. And it's happening right now. It's happening in everything, mental health, women's leadership, it's literally happening as a social consciousness. And we just can't stand back anymore and say, well, it's someone else's problem and it's someone else's thing and someone's going to do it and they're going to do it. And when you're a business, your responsibility is to do it. And that's, that's called deployment.
That is a catchy slogan. That could really make it. Frank, I think you've done pretty well in terms of your career. You were world champion, so that's a good example of what perseverance and commitment will do. Janet, let me run this over to you because you're in a unique position, Janet. First of all, you're an attorney, and I think a lot of people would view attorneys as partial gatekeepers because of their role in helping formulate public policy. But more than that, you sit on the board of directors of the Arizona Chamber of Commerce. You're on the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws, otherwise known as NORML, and you've got various other, if you will, public policy initiatives. So what's your point of view in terms of where you navigate and you steer your interest, your passion, your career, and your commitment to these issues? What can be done to actually give that lift and create we'll call it a level playing field, right? Just a simple level playing field. What can you do from your perch with your commitment through sitting on a number of boards and, of course, being an active attorney?
I think the first matter for all of us to embrace is to figure out how we can get the community disproportionately affected by the war on drugs to participate in the cannabis world. Many states, as you know, are changing their plans, their programs, or perhaps they're initiating their first program, which is typically a medical marijuana one. And I think we all as leaders need to encourage these communities to participate in the acquisition of a license. It doesn't matter which type, but a license is power. Now, I grew up in the Black Power and the women's lib era, if any of you kind of remember that. And the thing that really impressed me was this was a group of people in many cities across the country, actually 2 groups, who were out there vocal and active and acquiring power. Well, in the marijuana business, power is money, power is a license. So whenever a state opens up new licenses, I want us to all encourage the local community citizens to get out and make an application one way or another. Now, you may need money for that. Okay, talk to the business leaders in your community and get a commitment. In some states, the fees are waived, dependent upon income, for example, and expungement status. But the point is, acquire the power. Get in there, make an application, get a license. That's I think really critical to making real progress here.
I totally agree with that. One thing I think I hope all agree upon is that the cannabis industry is very expensive. And while there are many barriers to entry, one of the most profound barriers for everybody, but particularly acute for people from historically marginalized communities, is getting access to the capital. So getting a license costs money. You typically have to write very complicated applications, develop a set of SOPs, come up with a security plan. And, I know this because Global Go does licensing work for companies all over the world. It's even at our, fair pricing, it ain't free. It's often $100,000 or more just to get a license. Then that's just table stakes. You're in the game, but you don't have anything. Then you got to go build your business. And I've said that the hardest job for an entrepreneur is to raise capital for all of us. But again, it's no doubt harder for communities that have historical bullshit, stereotypical perceptions around them. So April, I got to shine a flashlight back on you. Tell us about, and this is a general question, it's not just about the cannabis industry. Your industry also likely was capital intensive. So what has it been like for you to get, if you had to require or rely upon outside?
Hello, I can't hear you. Can you hear me?
We've lost you, Paul. You lost your audio.
You're kidding.
Now can you kind of?
Ah,
Yeah.
all right.
Oh,
Bear with me one sec.
okay, go. We hear you.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay, wow, I had my question so perfectly phrased. I'm never going to get it as good the second time around. Rewind the tape. I wanted to ask you, April, just about your journey on how, if you needed to find outside capital to lift your business, what the challenges were for you, particularly as a woman of color. It's hard for anyone to raise money, I think, personally. It's a difficult part. But what was it like for you, and what were some of the challenges that you were able to overcome to build your business to scale?
Well, the first thing is, for me, I think it was strategy, right? Thinking about knowing that I had limited resources and I couldn't compete with my counterparts financially. I looked at the strengths and the things that I did have. So I knew that I was able to understand the market better because I was the market. So I could react much faster than corporate America because I knew what my customer wanted because I was the customer. So that was an asset that served me. Being naive to fear served me. So, you know, I kind of I was free falling. I didn't care because I was so young when I started that like I felt invincible. And I grew up, as you were talking about Black power, I'm Blexican. So, you know, you know, I knew what the struggle was. You know, my aunt came from Denver. She was Chicana, came with her chucks, taught me about that. And my father was a Black nationalist. So I grew up in the struggle. So I wasn't afraid, you know. I was like, let's go, America. So this was nothing new to me. I think the challenge was sitting across from white men in business suits that were telling me about my culture and why things would work and why they wouldn't work once they saw they can make money off of it. And it was hard because I knew the landscape because I was it, but now they were trying to alter and market it and monetize it. So they were the gatekeepers once again. And so it's figuring out, how do you stay authentic in your voice? How do you remain who you are, but monetize? And so I chose to do it differently. And I think because I chose the different path, it worked. Had I tried to compete in the fashion industry in the same way without a point of differentiation, I never could have survived if I played that game the way they wanted me to play it. So I chose to look at my business like I came in through kind of entertainment, because very early on I understood the power of relationships. And I built on those relationships and people like Biggie and Tupac and people that weren't who they are now in history, but they were young people that were hip hop, you know, and they loved hip hop, and it was energy feeding energy. So it's just like a tribe growing and figuring out this Rubik's Cube. And as we built that, we started building. I believe lateral cooperation creates vertical movement. So, you know, in building together, we built strong. And so once we proved that hip hop was here to stay, they started knocking on our doors because we had the support with or without the accounts, with or without the big chain stores, and they wanted it. And now we use, you're either leveraging or being leveraged. And so we use our leverage to empower our own tribes and build up. Teamwork creates the dream work. I know that's a cliche, but it's true. Like I could have never done it without my team. My team was everything. And it's really getting people who believe and are in alignment with the dream. And it's gotta be bigger than you know? And so this cannabis industry for me creates opportunity. It creates breakthroughs. It creates wellness. And it creates, a time in history we will never see again. You know, so my role is to use my influence to educate my community, to empower my community, and to expand, increase the wellness, to continue to disrupt, and to make space, to create more space, and let people know, if you can't get in here, but get in, put your flag in the sand now.
Love it. I think it's, my view is in our political economic culture, you either write the menu or you're going to find yourself on the menu. So you're writing the menu. I love it. All right, we are going to throw it now to Frank and Sholanda to give a little bit of an overview of cannabis social equity organizations. And following that, we're going to have a quick sponsorship program for Cannabiscope, and then we'll wrap up. So Frank, Sholanda, I know you're going to improvise a bit because this was Marvin's segment, but I have no concern about your ability to navigate this. Thank you so much.
Sure. Well, I'll just start by saying what I was sharing about how we're moving at Cannabiscope is really, we are interrogating what it is to be a community of practice around these matters. We are a diverse group of people working together. We built the technology, we've bumped up against a lot of the issues that marginalized leaders would face. And it's been critical that we have been adapting and to the circumstances that we face. So one of the things that we've done is created a CBD model for drop shipping and the technology that surrounds it for people to get involved with zero barriers to entry to having their own online cannabis shop. And we've chosen to partner with specific community leaders or maybe future leaders, right, to make sure that they can get shops open and start to participate in this economy. And also the opportunity includes learning the critical skills of working in the digital space, which obviously with COVID, we had a much more profound experience of what it means to not have access to brick and mortar. So not only can folks learn to rock a shop and get the word out about their own brand and leveraging the tools that we've created, they can also learn some of the skills that are needed in order to have a job at maybe a different environment that will require some of these skills. So what we're discovering as we build is that we actually are providing resources from the spaces that we're healing from, right, as entrepreneurs. And at Frank and Marvin and I've talked like, oh, I didn't have that. Oh, maybe we need to provide that. Or, oh, what happens if you learn how to build a shop or you have a really big Instagram, but you don't really have a website or a URL. So we've been thinking about all these things and positioning ourselves to share these, the technology that we've built with key organizations. And we want to make it available for people. Let's say you were a legacy dispenser and now you need to learn how to work in the digital environment. We want to be a solution for that. And right now it's very specific to CBD, but this technology will evolve as the market changes and as the laws change as well. And Frank, did you want to speak to some of the specific groups?
Yeah, I can speak about the groups, but I can also talk about, I think the biggest thing for me is the end game, right? So the end game for us is to help people go through the journey of entrepreneurism and end up with a successful business. But I know plenty of people who start at the top and quickly fall because they don't have the education, they don't have the network, they don't have the reason, they don't have the support group. And so, then they lose that fearlessness, they lose that hope, they lose their money, they lose their house. And, what I love about the Cannabiscope technology is it allows us to start anybody in the space, create revenue. Then our job is to guide them through that journey. So when they become a dispensary owner or, they have their own clothing line or they build out these revenue models, they build themselves a following, they know how to run that business, maximize it, and then they know what the journey was. So they'll turn around and help, the rest of them, right? And get to that oneness of helping everybody and getting everybody along the journey. The hardest thing for me was, I didn't go to school. I went to juvenile youth institutions. So when I got success, I didn't know what to do with it. And I had to backtrack and find people and get mentors and get education and get support so that I didn't end up like many professional athletes, with nothing at the end of the journey. So that's like the dream for me. Yeah. And, what we're doing in Cannabiscope is letting anybody create a business and anybody get into the space. And from there, they start their journey. We support them with technology, with education, and with information. And what we're doing is through supporting other groups, supporting other nonprofits that are on this journey as well, education, awareness, support. we're providing scholarships for them so that we can both support that company. And then anybody inside of that company can then create additional revenues and work their way up that business. And so here's the example. If I'm a good-hearted woman and I believe in this social cause and I want to help, that's great. But how does that make money at the end of the day? And how does that get me to my end goal, which is I still need revenue to pay rents, to buy my kids food, to do all those things. So, when I look at Cannabis Scope and sort of its mission, right? The mission is build people up, create revenue and education along the way, but also build this social equity out so everybody can participate, in the opportunity. And we talk about specific companies. The one I'm most excited about right now is we're pledging a support to Lee 411. And, this is a group that does nothing but get registered nurses to answer calls to educate people about cannabis. So if I want to get into the space and I'm a 55-year-old man and I have pains, I show up at a store, I don't get education because we can't do that right now. But I can call them and say, hey, tell me about this. Will this help? Blah, blah, blah. And they provide a service that directly educates the consumer, that takes the fear out of me and allows me to take a step into the cannabis space. And then we grab them and put them to work. But those are the type of partnerships that, we feel are super important because it connects everybody, provides opportunity. And then if I'm a nurse donating my time to this, that's time away from my family. That's time away from my resources, from my job. So we want to provide those nurses with opportunity, because if you're going to give, well, you should get back. And that's where I think, that's where I want to get cannabis businesses thinking. We know the history and we're aware we got to do deployment and action. And where can my business support others? Where can my business educate? Where can my business, teach and outreach? And that's why I'm so passionate about Cannabis Scope. Anyone can start a business, but on that journey, we're going to show you the truth. We're going to connect you with, an important community. And then at the end of the day, we're going to teach you how to be successful with it. And that's what good business is, in my opinion.
And I just want to add that there is a layer of support with Charles, that he's on our team. He works directly with the shop owners to support them and engage with them. So it's not just we get them in the mix and then they don't have a person to engage with. And that's really critical while people are on this journey.
Yeah, and our next stage of the business is focused not even on expansion, it's on education. Because everybody's going to have the same process. Oh, how do I market? How do I do this? How do I do that? All business is exactly the same. It's just, what do you do with your business? Once you're at this level and that level, and then, my hope is at the highest level, then what do you do with your business to help others? So that's kind of our mission.
Fantastic. Agreed. All businesses are somewhat the same. Each one has its own idiosyncratic challenges, but there really is commonality. I used to have a sort of a expression or a comment that, the local paperboy and Bill Gates, if they talked about it for a while, they'd figure out they have a lot in common: supply chain, distribution, customer service, technology, innovation, and there is certain sort of fundamental principles. I think we're interested to learn more about Cannabis Scope, and I believe that we're now going to have a quick 5-minute introduction to the Green Valley Market Sponsorship Program, which is part of Cannabis Scope, following which I'll make concluding remarks. And Cannabis Scope, I'll say, as also a shareholder in the company, it likely is the least barrier to entry platform for people to enter the CBD industry. It's almost at no friction, no cost, no time. And it really is in a unique position to eradicate some of the traditional barriers to entry that have prevented intelligent, aspirational people of all stripes and colors from entering the industry. But it's particularly a playing field leveler in terms of reducing the necessary capital. So let's try to run that presentation, and then I'll finish up with concluding remarks. Panelists, amazing job. We could have gone for much longer. We'll do a follow-up and we'll continue. We haven't scratched the surface, but we've done a nice job covering the headlines and some strategies and some great insights. So thank you so much.
And you were a great moderator.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Improvisation.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, they say, you know, that expression, they say necessity is the mother of invention, but actually invention is the mother of necessity. Really. All right, can we run that presentation, administrative team? Awkward silence, great.
I don't have a presentation. I don't know who is going to be giving that, but if the folks from Cannabis Scope would like to touch on that, that works for me.
Yeah,
Believe
yeah, we
that
can do that.
Marvin thing, yeah. Go ahead, Frank.
Yeah, well, so, you know, along with supporting what we're doing, what we're also doing is creating sponsorships. And this is something your business can do right away, right? So we're looking for the, you know, the single mom. We're looking for the young hustler out of school who wants to learn business. Like we're actively looking for these people that want to get into the space that we know will be of benefit. But hey, there is a little bit of a cost to get in. And so what we want to do is get rid of that cost. So if you own a business and you want to take action now, we're offering a scholarship program where you can, you know, you can sponsor, you know, 3, 5, 10, however many people you want. Our cost to do that is $199. So you can sponsor one person too. Like you can find somebody you like, you can get an intern, like you can help them create a business at very low cost and get them into this, you know, growth pattern. And that's one of the things we're offering and asking other businesses to do. If you're not structured to take deployment and take action now, consider sponsoring somebody or a group of people. You know, even like the Leaf 411, like all these nurses are out there doing great service for the cannabis space, but they still have to make money at some point. They don't get paid for what they do. They're doing it because they want to help. So if you want to help and you want to take some action in that way, we provide the sponsorship opportunity, and we encourage you to leap in with us because A, it'll change someone's life and it'll get them into this course. And then B, that will multiply and we'll be able to sponsor more, create more. And that's it in a quick summary of what the sponsorship program is about and what we're encouraging and offering other businesses to do.
Amazing. Interested parties can reach out to Frank. They can go to the Cannabis Scope website and they can learn how to activate, sponsor, or actually participate in setting up a business through the Cannabis Scope platform. Thanks, Frank, so much for that. Really, really appreciate the overview. We have reached the end of today's program, which I think was in my opinion, maybe the most interesting program we've hosted yet. And we are going to do this again because this issue is too important, too vital, and too enormous to cover in a single session. Although I will say our panelists have done a pretty darn good job giving us both the high and the low, the micro and the macro. And now it's everyone's challenge and opportunity to go that extra step and actually do something to make a change, be that agent of change. Talk is great. It doesn't really change the world. Action is what's going to change the world. I want to thank our sponsors, without whom's contribution today would not be available. Cannabis Scope, of course, the platform that Frank and I are both involved with. ArcView, Last Prisoners Project. Please, if you can dig deep and make a donation of any size, we recommend $100 to Last Prisoners Project. There's probably no more direct way to cause an immediate impact and to start heal some of the scars from the so-called war on drugs, which has, we know, massively disproportionately prejudiced people from Black and brown communities. Let's do what we can to change that. That's what Last Prisoners does. And it actually has succeeded in freeing people from incarceration, and not just freeing them, helping them land on the other side. Because I used to be a criminal defense attorney. Opening the door to jail is just the beginning. It's providing a place and a community to land in, affordable housing, employment opportunities. Just getting that door open is not enough. If you don't take care of the people and reintegrate them into society, you're increasing the chance that that door is going to unfortunately stay open. So let's all do our part. I also want to thank the law firm of Zuber Lawler, CF and Media Group, and Cannabis. Until next time, I'm Paul Rosen, your accidental moderator and your proud host. Looking forward to our next interplay. God bless. Let's do the work, and let's look forward to gathering again soon. Thank you.
Thank you.